Hey, it is another day of Litvak Leadership Live. I am here today speaking with my new friend, Kristine Hillmer. She is the president and CEO of the Wisconsin Restaurant Association. So, very timely guest, very timely time to speak about this important topic, places we all love to go and celebrate, and how we help them stay in business. Kristine, how are you today?
I'm doing fabulous. It's a great day outside. Spring is around the corner. Restaurants are starting to open up. We're starting to see vaccines in arms. There's lots of glimmers of hope on the horizon.
There's lots of glimmers of hope. And I don't know if you know this gentleman, and I can't believe I'm calling him a gentleman, but Eric Bam he's with Perfect Crust Pizza Liners, and he was very concerned about the restaurant industry with winter coming in because all the outdoor dining, was going to get cut off, especially in places like Wisconsin, because you guys get really cold. But now that spring is around, yeah, just a little bit. But now that spring is around the corner, there is great opportunity and hope, I'm sure.
And it really is just one of those glimmers that I'm mentioning. We know that restaurants really survived in 2020 with a lot of outside dining. It was a way for them to increase capacity. During the winter, of course, it's a little cold up here. And when it's 30 below, wind chill, and when the snow is flying, it's a little hard to have outside dining. But the ability to open up outside patios and be able to increase that capacity in that way, especially for those diners who don't quite feel comfortable dining inside yet, is really going to help boost sales.
Absolutely. So we've got all kinds of levels of opening up across the country. And when you and I were talking before we started, how Wisconsin is very much a patchwork as to what is happening with opening up. I mean, what have restaurants done during this very interesting time to survive? Oh, and here's the man who brought us together, Brian Weeble.
Hi, Brian.
Brian's a great guy. He is awesome at introducing people and networking. And now I'm probably going to need to give him another video of me saying that. So Brian is a great guy. So Kristine, when you look at ghost kitchens, when you look at carry out and all the different facets, how have restaurants survived? I mean, all those weeks and months where no one could go in must have been horrible.
So the COVID pandemic has really been very harmful to restaurants in a lot of different ways, primarily in that the reduced capacity as well as the reduced interest of dining inside because people were just not feeling safe really has been very harmful. Right now, we estimate perhaps 10 to 15% of restaurants have already gone out of business. An additional 20 to 30% are on the bubble and might go out of business. However, as I said earlier, there are some glimmers of hope. And one of the reasons why is restaurateurs by nature are entrepreneurs. And they're people, hospitality. That hospitality mentality is amazing to see. And so with all of this, these things that have happened to the industry, restaurateurs have gotten very creative. You've mentioned a couple of them. You've Ghost Kitchen. Some of them have added to their arsenal and done either outside dining or food trucks. They've done virtual meals. They've done meal kits. They've been take and bake at home. They've done virtual tastings. They've partnered with other brewery or a bakery to add to their menu. So lots of really creative stuff, and that's what I love about the restaurant industry is they don't necessarily, oh, woe is me. They're like, okay, how can we make a difference and how can we continue to operate in a creative way? And that's what I love about our restaurateurs. It's really cool to see.
So when you look at what these restaurateurs have done in the entrepreneurial spirit, what types of programs or platforms have they embraced that it got accelerated where people were thinking, okay, this may be 10, 15 years off, but now it's happening instead?
So you're absolutely right. The pandemic has accelerated change within the industry. Some good, some not good. I think that some of it is here to stay. Some of it is probably temporary. But for example, so pre-COVID, we knew through all the data and the research that's been out there that the acceleration of curbside and delivery, so basically taking your restaurant quality meals and taking it home, that was already a trend pre-COVID. That has accelerated contributed to a great deal. Now, you might think that that has made up for lost sales inside, and that's the case in just a little bit. Right now, our best guess, and with our data, it's showing that curbside and delivery is only filling about 30% of those lost sales. So it's helpful, but it's not replacing it. But I think that those things are here to stay. And in addition to that, and unfortunately in Wisconsin, it's not legal yet, but it's one of the things we're advocating for, are two very specific tools for them to use. One is cocktails to go. So we would love to be able to fix that favorite Bloody Mary, that favorite margarita. Old fashions are huge in Wisconsin, and you put it in a container and you seal it. And then you can take it out, you can sell it, and they can take it with them, and they can have that Bloody Mary, margarita, or whatever at home with their restaurant quality meal. So right now that is not legal. They can purchase a factory sealed, so a can of beer, a sealed bottle of wine. That is already in place, but we want to add that craft cocktail to the mix. And so that's past the assembly. Next week it's going to be heard in the assembly, and so it's on the fast track to being passed. So fingers crossed that that's going to happen. The other thing that we are advocating for is delivery. And so that's where if you have a pizza delivered, you have your favorite Italian delivered, that maybe you can have that 6-pack of beer, you can have that bottle of wine. Now, before anybody is concerned, there are safeguards in place. So you still have to check IDs. You still have to make sure that there is training of that driver. So there's still that face-to-face checking of an ID. You can't leave it with somebody who's impaired. So all those checkpoints are still there. But it's one of those things that the industry has seen this trend. 40 states have delivery right now. 32 states have cocktails to go. So it's one of those things that was there pre-COVID that we've seen and accelerated due to the pandemic that we see is going to be continuing out there. So those are just two examples. I think outside dining is going to be huge. I think that the social distancing is not here to stay. I think while we have to have these limits and the mask wearing and so on, I see those once more there's more vaccines available, once the rates of the transmission continue to be low, I see those as decreasing over time. So those are two that I would say are probably not going to here to stay.
So the statistics that I read say fully 30 to 40% of the adult population of the United States doesn't plan to get vaccinated. Do you see restaurants setting themselves up as you must be vaccinated to come in here? Where do you see that going?
I don't think that restaurants, by and far, there might be a few here or there, but I do not see that they are going to require people to be vaccinated to come into their facility. Restaurateurs by nature they have the hospitality heart. They want to welcome people. They want to have a great dining experience ready and available to them. And I think if you add an insert having that vaccination requirement, that really gets in the place of that transaction, of that experience that they're trying to give to you. So I don't see that happening.
So besides the lack of customers, during the pandemic, what do you think the biggest impact of COVID was on restaurants?
So I think this is going to be our biggest challenge moving forward, and this is going to be something we're going to be facing for at least 6 months. And the confidence that eating out is safe. Honestly, it doesn't matter what capacity limits are arbitrarily put on a restaurant. If people are not feeling safe, they are not going to dine at your restaurant. That is the biggest one. But I also see that there's pent-up demand. I see that people are feeling much more confident now that there's a greater adoption of vaccinations, that the supply of vaccinations are much, much higher. So I see that confidence building, but it's going to take a while. And they're going to be also watching. Consumers, when they come into a restaurant, are observing what the staff are doing, are observing how things are going. Are they hyper sanitizing? Are they wearing the mask? Are they doing all the normal things, the best practices right now during COVID, are they doing them in their operations, and are they visually seeing that? If they're not, there's a lot of customers that are walking out the door quietly and may never come back. So we have always advocated that our restaurateurs should definitely be following the best practices as set out by the CDC, not only because it's the right thing to do, but because we know that consumers are watching that, and that's going to be one of the biggest things to help develop that confidence that eating out is safe.
So do you see as a standard restaurants keeping their wait staff wearing masks and wearing gloves? Because I mean, I'll tell you, I feel bad for the wait staff. It is put offish to me. I know that it's not their choice, but I know that there is a loud group that thinks that it should be like that forever. What do you think?
I think restaurateurs are going to be challenged to figure out and take the pulse of their consumers. At some point in time, I think the masks are going to go away. I think that it's not going to be here permanently. One thing I do want to challenge you on is the use of gloves, because this is actually not a good best practice in a restaurant. And the reason is that, no, it's not you. It's a very common misconception, because a lot of people look for it and they don't see it and they question why. So when people wear gloves when they're serving, they are actually not washing their hands as much as they should. They should be washing their hands all the time, between customers, between going and picking up the dishes, between serving and so on. And when you're wearing gloves, you're not apt to do it. Plus, what you should be doing is washing your hands, then putting gloves on, and in between each customer, taking the gloves off and washing your hands again. And hand sanitizer actually degrades the rubber or the latex in the gloves. Yeah. So gloves are actually not a best practice, especially in COVID, because it generally makes people have a false sense of security, and people don't change their gloves. And it drives me a little bit crazy when I see people wearing gloves in a grocery store, when the better practice would be do hand sanitizer, use the little wipes that you can get as you walk in the door, clean out the handle and so on. But the gloves are giving you a very false sense of security, because as soon as you touch something with the gloves and then you touch the handle, everything's contaminated, just like you would be with.
I mean, I've been in the janitorial industry for years, and the standard operating procedure is after you clean one restroom, before you go in the next, you take off those gloves and put on another pair of gloves, because you are transferring otherwise, and people just don't get that at all. So the Wisconsin Restaurant Association, what are some of the resources that you have for restaurants in Wisconsin or even nationwide that you can recommend?
So a couple of things. One of the things that we have prided ourselves on and really have gone to extraordinary lengths to help our members navigate is verifying and make sure all of the resources that we have and the information we are sharing with them is correct. We take that extra time to verify and check links and check with the experts and so on before we share it. We may not always be the first out with the message, but when we send a message out, it is correct. All of those things are placed on our website. So if you go to wirestaurant.org, so WI Wisconsin, restaurant.org, you can see that we have a lot of resources there during normal times, but we also have some very robust web pages specifically on COVID, as well as we are affiliated with the National Restaurant Association. We're not a chapter of them, but we are partners. And so we have a lot of resources that we come because of that relations with the National Restaurant Association, with their Serve Safe and food safety resources, as well as their advocacy. So on the advocacy side, we've been working very hard at the local and state level, and with the National Restaurant Association at the national level. So the things that we've recently done and the recent wins is we've got the Restaurant Recovery Fund, which is $28.6 billion that was just passed recently by the federal government. Now, you might think that that sounds like a tremendous amount of money, and it is. But when you consider $28.6 billion compared to approximately $240 billion of lost sales in restaurants in 2020, it's a drop in the bucket. And so you're talking resources. we have a website devoted to the Restaurant Recovery Fund on our website on what restaurateurs can do right now to get ready and prepared to apply for those dollars, because the application is not open yet. We're not exactly sure when it is, and I'll get to that in a second, but we want them to be ready because that money is going to go fast. Now, I mentioned that those applications with the Small Business Administration, SBA, is not quite open yet, and that is true. Once Congress passes any kind of a major bill, it then goes to the agencies to make it come to life. This is where they do the rules around it. This is where they do the applications and so on. And as an example, there was in December a fund set aside for stages and performing art venues, a large amount of money to help support them because they have been closed by and far. They have yet to see the applications for those on the website yet.
What?
So so it's not even out there yet. And so
they need to hire an eighth grader to get that job.
Well, but they have to get, who qualifies and what are the conditions and all the whys, wherefores and protect taxpayers against fraud. And I'm not saying that these venues would cause fraud, but there are some bad actors out there. So they've got to put the parameters in place. So that's one of the things, and this is a very specific example. We've got a great website with lots of correct information, a step-by-step, this is what you need to do to get prepared and so on. And when those applications are open, we will communicate that out immediately. But we're also trying to help our members and set that stage for them on expectations. You can't have access to the money now because it's in the hands of the Small Business Administration. And that's frustrating, and that's an education process and a resource process for us to help our members understand that. When it's open, our members are going to be front in line and ready to go because of what we've done to help them, but it's just not quite yet. So that's just an example of what we do and how we operate for our members.
So what are some of the more creative solutions to drive revenue that you've seen restaurateurs putting in place?
Well, we talked about some of them just a little while ago, ghost kitchens. And what this is basically you set up a brand and you set up your menu and so on, and you use a kitchen that is already in existence. So it could be the kitchen of an existing restaurant. It could be just a commercial kitchen where there's no seating, but that's the key. People can't visit there and sit inside of it, but you can order online, you can get it delivered and so on. And it's a way for restaurants to test menus, to test products, to maybe launch a brand, build it before they actually go to brick and mortar. So that's a really creative use that we're seeing. It was, again, started a little bit before COVID, but it really has accelerated. Food trucks. What's interesting is food trucks typically have been a way for a young entrepreneur or a new entrepreneur to test out a menu, excuse me, to get their ducks in a row and kind of test and make sure that they're solid and build a following before they go to brick and mortar. What we're seeing is some brick and mortar are adding food trucks to their menu of options. So it really makes them more mobile and get into some areas that maybe is not as familiar with their menu. We've seen in Wisconsin, we've got some that have done cocktails kits. Now, you heard me say earlier that you can't mix a cocktail and sell it right now. That's what we're advocating. But you can have a factory sealed bottle of brandy, or think of those little airline bottles of booze. So you can have the mix, or you can give them the sealed bottle of brandy and the fruit and some 7-Up and some bitters and build a whole kit and then sell the whole kit. That is legal. So it's a way to creatively get around some of the nuances. And again, it's all about creating that restaurant quality experience at home. Or meal kits. So you can go to many restaurants and you can say, I would like a lasagna dinner for 4. I'm going to pick it up, but I don't want you to heat it up. So you can take it home. You can prepare it in your oven. You can heat it up, restaurant quality at home on your time, and you can still watch Netflix or your favorite streaming show as you're having that restaurant quality meal. We've also seen where you have a recipe, and you have all the raw ingredients and you can prepare it at home. Maybe you're learning how to cook, or maybe you're going to be experiencing an online experience. So they're going to show you how to prepare that meal, whatever it is, but you've got all the ingredients ready to go and you purchase this kit. You can even add the element of a tasting. So maybe add a craft distiller or a craft beer or a local winery to that whole mix. So again, it's expanding that experience beyond just that brick and mortar to other opportunities. Those are some of the more creative ones I've seen.
Oh yeah. So I know a lot of people I guess everything is relative, in the restaurant industry, mainly in Italian restaurants and pizza. And it seems like the bane of the industry is Grubhub, Uber Eats, and the various delivery services that there are some people that are highly critical of them, that they take so much profit from the restaurateur. What advice do you have for when a restaurateur is wanting to set up their own delivery system to, keep those profits? How do they do something like that?
Well, it's an interesting dichotomy that's in the market right now. There's a lot of restaurants who, prior to the pandemic, did not offer or even want to go anywhere near delivery, but it's become a really important tool. And there's honestly some types of food that really don't make itself amenable to delivery. Like, high-end steak, I don't know if I want to have a prime rib or a ribeye delivered. I'm not sure that quality is going to transition over. But restaurants really need to look at a number of things. One is, do they want to have a relationship with a third-party vendor, or do they want to have it in-house? Or do they want to, and do they have the insurance to cover it? Do they have the manpower to do it? Does the manpower have the vehicle and so on? There's a lot of things that need to be considered into it. My take on third-party delivery is it's not inherently bad. Having somebody deliver your food in itself, in theory, is not a bad thing. However, it's when those third-party deliveries take an old menu and they put it on their website and there's no relationship with the restaurant. And so, pun intended, the restaurant is not in the driver's seat to figure out who delivers their food, how it's delivered, make sure it's done safely, when it leaves the restaurant, when it gets to the customers, and then that pricing piece of it. That's my objection when that happens. And unfortunately, it's a very frequent thing that we see, especially during the pandemic. A lot of restaurants kept on staff or rehired staff and brought them out of unemployment so that they could keep them employed and give them a job and give them something to do by self-delivering those food. The other problem with when they take that, they may take an old menu. So say you have a farm to table or you have a seasonal menu. So I happen to love butternut squash ravioli, and it's just one of those things I love to have in the fall. Well, you don't necessarily have that as a common ingredient here in the spring, but they'll take an old menu, pop it up there, and then if you don't have the ingredients or you can't make it or you no longer offer it or the pricing is wrong, then the customer doesn't get mad at the third-party delivery. They get mad at the restaurant when they had no control over what that third-party delivery did. So I get the convenience of third-party delivery. I get it. But my plea, and it doesn't matter if you're in Wisconsin, you're anywhere else in this country, if you want to get food delivered and there's a convenience factor to it, you don't have to leave your couch. I get it. But call the restaurant directly or look on their website to find out how to get their food delivered. They can tell you, and they will have the most updated pricing, the most updated menu, and then the restaurant is in control of that, is in the driver's seat, again, pun intended, on how that process happens.
So what do you see as we look further into the year? The warm weather's coming. There'll probably be more al fresco dining happening. But what about when we go into the fall and the winter? What is the forecast for what is going to happen with restaurants then?
I believe that we are going to be on the road to recovery, especially once we've gone through a summer. Vaccine adoption will be much greater. The levels will probably likely to continue to be low. That's what my crystal ball is telling me. Of course, things can obviously change. I think people will become much more comfortable. We talked earlier about that consumer confidence and eating out is safe. I think that's going to be heightened a little bit as people are really feeling that want and that need to really resume some of their normal activities. The one thing I would caution folks, though, is two things. One is, please be patient with restaurateurs. They have been through the ringer, and they are doing everything they can to survive, to keep their staff safe, and to keep their customers safe. So if you have concerns about what their safety protocols are, or if you don't want the safety protocols, there's a lot of people who don't want to wear a mask and want to be able to belly up to the bar with their friends and not have to worry about that. Contact the restaurant and find out what they're doing. Look on their website, and then make sure that you are okay following the protocols in that restaurant. What we've seen, and it's a terrible thing that restaurateurs have gone through, is a lot of consumers coming in and then second guessing everything they're doing when they are literally trying to survive, when they are trying to keep their staff safe, when they are trying to at least stem the losses that they're seeing. So they haven't willy-nilly put together all these safety protocols just because you disagree with them. And if you go into a place and you don't see masks and you want to wear a mask, well, maybe that's something that you could have checked on their website to see what they're doing. Or if they're wearing masks and you don't want to wear a mask, please don't give the server a hard time and the hostess or the owner. They are trying to survive. Be kind and be patient. Everybody's trying to do their best to get back to normal, to really have a good experience in the restaurant, and fighting with them over there, the protocols or the things that they've put in place just is not helpful.
And there is a point where, everyone is an adult and they have to make their own decisions whether they are going to go to a specific restaurant or not go. Just like they have, as things open up more and more, people need to decide when a place is like, okay, well, we don't have to have masks, like if you're in Texas. If you're uncomfortable, stay home.
Or when you go to the restaurant, you can still wear your mask. You can still wear a mask. Do that for yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I guess my point is that, just don't make it about you and argue with them over whatever protocols they have or don't have in place. It's not helpful. Be kind. These operators and servers and hostess and cooks have been through the ringer. They're doing everything to survive, and having you come in, not you, but having somebody come in and second guess everything they're doing just is weary, and it's frustrating, and it's not helpful.
So I know, there, like you said, there's been 10 to 20% of restaurants that have gone out of business, but I know of lots of restaurants that have expanded. Name one. Paulie G's in the Chicago franchise has opened up a second location. They're opening up a location in New Orleans. There's other restaurants that I see in my own local area where one restaurant's gone out of business and another one has, bam, gone in there, said, you know what, we're going to make this work. What has been your finger on the pulse? People talk about, like you said, the number that have gone out of business, but how many restaurants have been started?
I don't have those numbers off the top of my head. I do know there's a lot of restaurants that are struggling, but there are some restaurants that are doing really, really well. And especially those that already have in place delivery, drive-through, curbside options, or have food that really lend itself to those kind of options, they are tending to do better. And, restaurateurs are entrepreneurs, and we mentioned that before. And if they see an opportunity to expand or be able to take over where somebody else has gone out of business and so on, they're looking in the long term, especially now that we're seeing some glimmers of hope with vaccines and increases in capacity limits and so on. So they are business people, and they will look at those opportunities. And if they have the capacity and they have the financial backing to do it, it's a great way to expand and really be ready. I think the second half of 2021, we're going to see a lot of business, a lot of pent-up demand. People want to get out. It's not going to be back to 100%, but I think you're going to see a lot more people out and about.
So how many restaurateurs is your organization talking to on a daily basis on average?
So, big picture, the Wisconsin Restaurant Association represents 1,500 members with 7,000 locations in our state. And what I mean by that is you were talking that you were mentioning a restaurateur that has multiple locations. And so that's why we make that distinction. So 1,500 members, 7,000 location. One of the things that we've done during the pandemic is we have been hyper communicating, especially as there's been changes or something's been lifted or an opportunity like the Restaurant Relief Fund. We've been hyper communicating. So we at least probably now it's at least 3 times a week. Over the summer when things were changing so much, sometimes it was 3 times a day, we were hyper communicating out. And we also made early in the pandemic a decision that went between April 1st and through the end of June that it did not matter to us if you were a member of ours or not. We were in the survival fight for our industry. And so anybody that we had a contact with, we sent them that information because it was that critical. We represent an industry. Yes, we are a membership-based organization. Yes, members are the lifeblood of our organization and our own financials and so on. But this really became something bigger than our membership. And so we felt the need and we felt the responsibility, to be honest, to help anybody who is in the industry. Now, we did dial that back towards the end of June and so on. But still, there are things that we do send out to the broad group to make sure that they are aware of what's going on, but we have dialed back and really focused hyper on our members. In addition to those communications that we send out, we have a weekly e-newsletter that we send out to members, and that's about a 3,000 list because there's some people that share emails and so on. So, and then of course our website, which we have seen astronomical growth on the hits and so on. But again, getting back to what we originally said, we have prided ourselves on having the correct information, the verified information. So you know that if you go to our website or you look at our communications, what we're telling you at that time is the absolute truth, and you know it's verified. It's not rumor, and we take that extra time to do that.
That is outstanding. Well, we've gone 32 minutes in a 30-minute show. So
I could go on and on and on. It's a fascinating topic.
It is a completely fascinating topic. So what I'd like you to do is take the next 2 minutes and speak to those who are watching now and those that'll be watching on replay and talk to them about how they can continue to engage to experience success.
So I'm going to talk to 2 audiences very quickly. I'm going to talk to first consumers. You are the lifeblood of a restaurant. Restaurants cannot survive without you. And so we need you to, even with the reduced capacity, there's open seats, there's open tables, go enjoy that favorite food. If you're not quite comfortable inside, do curbside, do that delivery, eat outside and so on, support your favorite restaurants. We want them around at the end of this. Restaurants are the lifeblood of a community. Name one successful community that doesn't have a restaurant. You can't do that. So you are critical. To your restaurateurs, keep at it, hang in there. We know we see glimmers of hope. Restaurant workers just this past week became eligible for vaccines in Wisconsin. Hang in there. You have a whole support system of people behind you. We want to see you succeed. Do the best job that you can. Continue to make your great food. Continue to support your staff and everything you can. And we're going to see you on the other side of this. I look forward to that.
That's awesome. Kristine, thank you so much for being on the show today. Fascinating topic. You're a wealth of information, and I know that your members of your association should be very, very happy that you are leading the charge.
Well, thank you. I certainly hope so, but I just hope that many of them are going to survive, and we're doing everything our level best to help them do that.
Awesome. Awesome. Everyone else, that's Litvak Leadership Live for today. We'll be back tomorrow with another guest from another part of the country talking about something else, but it's still going to be leadership focused. You have a blessed day.